It's 1998, and I'm sitting in my boyfriend's apartment by myself in front of his old styly MacBook Pro, and I'm trying to decide if I should check his email or not. I don't have the password, but I'm sitting there looking at it, and nothing before in my life has prepared me for anything like this. I had always been attracted to the sweetest, nerdiest, most trustworthy boys as a junior high and high school student. My parents are 46 years married, great role models to me. I always felt secure and comfortable with who I was dating. And woo! All right, let's hear it for nerdy, trustworthy men. So, I even waited until I was nearly, I think a month shy of 20 years old before I ever had sex. And that was because I was waiting for the perfect time when I was in love in a romantic bunk bed underneath a Bob Marley Uprising poster while Bob Marley Uprising was playing on a cassette tape, and the smell of patchouli and tofu scramble and wet mucklucks, which were a Guatemalan sock slipper that we would buy from vendors on the streets of Santa Cruz and wear out in the rain into the redwood forests and come back in and sleep in while they were still wet. So I had this great boyfriend, and this is my college experience, right? My first boyfriend in college who I first had sex with. He was so great, and from Northern California, up Mendocino County. Long hair, rode a mountain bike, was an environmental studies major, was really concerned about the peregrine falcon, and he was just like really great person. And I discovered while we were together that I would often find myself very curious and interested and excited and intrigued by a lot of other different people. And I would find myself developing these relationships with them where we would engage in these, long conversations. And by conversations, I mean that then we were having sex. Now, I think, I've never been to therapy, but I think that psychologists might call this the ability to compartmentalize. When you can be having this one experience over here and be having a totally other experience over there, and you're somehow in your mind able to separate them, and you make up a whole way in your life in which it makes sense that you are having dinner with someone and then going somewhere else and then sitting at a restaurant having dinner with somebody else 2 hours later, or begging off because you have to go home early because you have to wake up to go to work, when actually you end up getting no sleep at all, but you feel great the next day and everything's fine. And I don't understand. I really do not understand how this became part of my early dating experience having these relationships, and then somehow able to conduct myself in these ways, which are, buying a plane ticket for Seattle with 24 hours notice for $600 because I had to go see somebody. Yeah, it's really deep and weird. And I have written 3 books of nonfiction. I've never written about this, nor have I ever spoken about this in public. So, when David asked me to come here, I thought, I have a story. So, to make myself seem likable and attractive as just an individual, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but was somehow able to carry on this behavior for years and years. And there would be a very amazing, incredible line cook at the restaurant that I worked at, or there would be this painter, and it was like I wanted to hear everything that he had to say and see what we would do together without our clothes on. And there would be the guy who worked at the printing press, and then the other line cook who worked next to the other guy on the line. And it all seemed very just kind of normal, and in a way that I really, talking about it, am confused by. So eventually when I moved to San Francisco, and that was the other thing too, is that I did not have that kind of groovy, sex-positive San Francisco language that I would learn later to maybe think of myself as a polyamorous person or something like that. It really was just the old-fashioned, just telling lies and slipping out early and looking one way and doing something else and acting as if everything was totally normal. I met this great guy, and we ended up living together for a couple years. And that lasted until I met somebody who I was so crazy about, and I felt like it was time to leave that relationship, and so I did. And I was about to go on tour across the country. It was beginning of summer, and I was about to leave, and I didn't have anywhere to live. And this new guy that I was seeing, we both decided it probably wasn't smart for me to go from, being with this one guy right to like living in his place before I went on tour, especially because his girlfriend was in Moscow on a study program and lived there as well. She just wasn't there, but her things were there. So I moved in with a friend who had an extra room in her apartment that I could rent for $125 a month, but I couldn't stay there on Tuesdays because the friend who lived there would come back from her boyfriend's house on Tuesdays, and that's where she would stay. They would have one night apart where they would just do their own thing. So then I remember going out in San Francisco on Tuesday nights and being, oh, well, where am I gonna stay tonight? So I met this musician who was so interesting to me because he came from a background very similar to mine. And a lot of the people that I dated were from a lot of single moms, guys who grew up poor, had these really strong moms who were really awesome. And there were certain patterns and certain things, but this guy that I met was from the Bay Area where I grew up. We had the same, is that a time cocktail? Okay, so same, we had the same, like we could sing the Pete Ellis Dodge, 1099 West El Camino Real, Sunnyvale, like everything that was like a commercial for the Dodge dealership. And it was so weird. We had all the same cultural references. His parents were still married. His sister was his best friend, and my brother is one of my best friends, and we just were very, very compatible that way. So he ended up saying, when I got back from tour, one night I was in Chicago and I got there and there were flowers in Chicago. This is pre, cell phone or anything. He had called the bar and, I talked to him on the phone and I came back and I was like, wow, all right, turning over a new leaf. This is the guy for me. I can't believe it. He's so incredible and so amazing. And we would ride our bikes. He had these little Schwinn's with banana seats, and we cooked food. We had such a great time. And so one night my band was playing, and he was going to get out of work at the studio and come over and see my band. And my band got done, and he wasn't there. And I was like, oh, I think maybe we're supposed to meet back at the house. And so I had a key to his apartment. I went back to the apartment, and he wasn't there. And I was like, oh, maybe. Well, so I waited for an hour, and I thought maybe I'm supposed to go back to the club. So I went back to the club, and he wasn't there. So I went back, and I waited at the apartment, and he wasn't there. And I just, no, so I can't call anybody, so I'm just waiting. And and then at about 3 o'clock in the morning, he comes home, and I was like, what happened? He's like, oh, God, the studio went late, and then we went out for drinks, and I thought you were done, and I'm really sorry. And then all through the night, it was a weird night sleeping, and it was like, so where did you go again? Because you got done with the studio, and I was trying to think. And the next morning I woke up, and he left, and I am sitting there with the computer thinking, I wonder what's happening. And I just clicked on the email program, no password needed, And I just, if you've ever done this, your heart in your throat and the feel, you can hear every sound in the house, and is that somebody coming in, and you're sweating, and you're looking at this, and it is just email after email after email from this person who apparently he had been seeing since before I had moved in. And when we had been up at the Bumbershoot Festival in Seattle, she had been there, and I put it all together. Got out my little address book and my date book and looked, and it was like, when he called me in Chicago, she had been here the night before that, and so I realized that I saw that he had a plane ticket booked for Los Angeles, where she lived, in 2 days. It was a Wednesday. He was leaving on Friday. He hadn't told me anything. I was so tempted to stick around and just see what he would say, where was he going on Friday, where I would be staying in his apartment and he wouldn't be there. So but I couldn't do that. So I got all my belongings, and I got my key, and I just walked out onto the street. I locked the door behind me, left the key there, and walked out onto the streets of San Francisco back to the house that I could stay in 6 nights a week. And I never called him. I never emailed him. I never went to his house. He never called me or tried to find me, because obviously we were very similar after all.